fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren. On KCK 106.9 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, and Mr. Gavin Stone is with us from the UK.
Hello, how are you all?
Well, everyone's good. Not really, but we say we are.
Yeah, it's become tradition.
It's partially your fault.
Yeah, that's it. Blame the Brit.
Yeah, it was all started with you.
Why not? I'll take the blame for everything. I usually get the blame anyway.
Yeah, just so you know. So everything that happens bad came from you. It started with you. You're the origins.
Ooh.
Just remember that. Okay.
Oh, well, I take my job seriously.
You've been doing a good job lately.
No kidding.
Well, here we go. So we've got someone I think you know, and he's been in the business, as we say, and he's got a new book out, and it's called Katya, the Informer. Trust no one, gamble everything. Mr. David Bickford, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Alan. It's a real pleasure. Thank you. Hello, Gavin.
Hi, good to hear your voice again, David.
You too.
So I hope I said the Katya name right, but you know, I've got my Canadian accent, so I never know.
Beautiful accent. Love the Canadians. Lots of good times in Canada. Katya is right, and she's Russian, so you pronounced it right too. Perfect.
There you go. Yeah, we went to school with a lot of Russians in Canada. We used to have an exchange program in the 70s.
That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, met a lot of Russians, spent 3.5 years in Berlin, which was my first real meeting up with Russians. And yeah, we had some good times. Had to watch them all the way, even more now.
Well, we were just like in grade 1, 2, and 3, so I wasn't really watching them for anything too severe, but you know.
I mean, they've now grown up and you have to watch them.
Let's talk about David for a while here. So, David, what kind of history did you have that you can talk about with different services for the government?
Yeah, sure. I was with the Foreign Office for a number of years and went to Berlin with them as the legal advisor to the British military government then during the Cold War in a rather Alice in Wonderland situation in Berlin where we dealt with the Russians, Americans and French to control Berlin. And then I came back to the Foreign Office and did a lot of work with defense, human rights, and also a lot of work with the FBI, American CIA on countering narcotics trafficking and organized crime. And then I was asked by MI5 and MI6 if I'd join them as their legal director, and I was there for about nearly 10 years.
Well, for the Americans, what would be the difference between MI5 and 6?
Yeah, sure. MI5 is FBI, MI6 is CIA. So MI5 deals with the home problems, MI6 deals with the foreign problems. But of course, when I took over, we were moving into counter-terrorism, the international terrorism and other terrorist problems. And of course, terrorism is international. So the differences between MI5 and MI6 become very, very blurred these days.
Well, I'm sure glad that we don't need them anymore because everything's resolved and the world's all living happy.
Yeah, sure. But
you know, makes me feel better. You guys did your job. Thank you. But listen, do you think we're still in the Cold War then, or back in a new type of Cold War with Russia and things as it stands now?
Yeah, it's getting colder, isn't it? I think Putin has to be controlled without any doubt whatsoever. I think we feel that a lot more over here in the UK and Europe. We're closer to Russia. and Ukraine is closer to us, and there is absolutely no doubt whatsoever that if Putin wins in Ukraine in any form whatsoever, then Estonia, Latvia, and the Baltic states become immediately vulnerable, and we may very well see an extension, which is something we just cannot afford to have.
And I guess the agencies, all of them, have to learn a new way of countering, because, you know, the thing with the internet, like social media and stuff, because there's so many, like in America, we have so many people that think Russia and Putin are great, good, better than even Democrats, which is kind of crazy. Like, they think he's a good person and they support him. So it really works, this, information overload on internet.
Yes, it does. I think there's a real difficulty too, because we have a lot of Russians here, of course, and most of them have absolutely no truck with Putin at all. And I think that the difficulty we have at the moment is reaching out to those Russians who do not want Putin around, who want a democracy, who don't want their freedoms curtailed, and trying to distinguish how we cooperate with them, but at the same time try and shut down Putin, as you say, both militarily and via his war on the internet.
Yeah, it's scary at times. It's surprising what people will believe, from something they've seen on, Twitter.
Yeah, that's certainly right. And I mean, certainly from the intelligence agency's point of view, I think it's probably easier for us to say that because, of course, we're used to dealing with liars and deceivers and corruptors, whereas the average person obviously does not. They don't come across people like that. They don't believe that people can be that evil. So it's very difficult for them not to believe quite a lot of the stuff that is put over the internet.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. Do you think people are smarter now? Do you think that people are duped easier or smarter? Or how do you classify it? Because you were in the business a long time. Would people in, let's say, the 70s and 80s and even 90s be as susceptible to this kind of information?
No, I think people are smarter, obviously, these days, because education has spread across much more widely than ever it had been before. They also have access to the internet, which gives them facts that are true. But I think if you look, for instance, at the number of people who can be duped by a simple fraud, such as a Nigerian fraud, asking to put money into a bank account to help someone out who's in trouble, it is quite believable that a lot of people do believe what's put up on the net.
God, you mean I shouldn't be sending money to Nigeria?
Very careful of sending money to Nigeria.
Remind me to cancel that standing order. I've got a Nigerian prince that I'm sending money to every week.
That's Gavin.
Yeah, he told me he's saving it all up to bring the $50 million that he's got stashed in. He's going to bring it over to me and give it all to me when he gets here.
Oh, right. Share that news with me, will you, Gavin?
Boy, yeah. How nice. Wow. Aren't you lucky?
Oh, what can I say? It's my retirement plan.
Oh, good. Don't hold your breath. So what would lead David here to decide to get into writing? Like, what brought you into that world?
Yeah, well, it was quite interesting because my granddaughter, who's 13, asked me to go down to her school to talk about spies. So I said, well, yeah, actually, I'll come down and do that. Could be a bit of fun. But when I was talking to the children there, 13, 14-year-olds, one, of course, had to talk about the women in MI5 and MI6 because this was a girls' school. And it occurred to me how incredibly well-versed women are in running counter-espionage, counter-terrorism. They're brilliant. And I thought, here is a world. And that really developed into the world of Katya and into the Katya series. So that's how it all started.
So what exactly, when you decide to write a book, what exactly are you aiming at? Are you just aiming to entertain people and readers? Do you have something you want them to catch in your stories? Is there some underlying, meaning or some subtext or something like that. What's your goal in writing?
Good. In the Katya series, there are really three goals. First, to entertain the reader, hopefully. Second, to really explore how brilliant women are in I was looking at MI5, MI6, but in the intelligence agencies in the States as well. How they manage to think of a number of different things at once, bring them all together into a single analysis that makes a lot of sense. Their ability to very quietly manipulate people, how they get alongside people in order to convert them, if you like, into acting for them. In other words, creating an agent relationship. And I don't mean this in any sexualized way, but just in their intellect. Very interesting. So Katya really reflects that. And the third part was that the books are all written around the turn of the century, 2000. That was a time when Russia was coming into to play within Europe, cooperating. It was the end of the communist era. We were watching the beginnings of capitalism sprout, more cooperation. So I created the G8 intelligence agency, which included Russia, America, and the United Kingdom. So Katya is a member of the G8 intelligence organization, having actually been trained by the FSB, the Russian Federal Security Service. So she has a lot of conflicts in that way, because having been trained by FSB, the methods, of course, are much harsher. So she has to sort of calm down a bit when she comes into G8. But needless to say, she doesn't when she's out in the field. Second, because she's Russian, she had a KGB father who was brutal. And he spent his whole life, until he was killed by the Chechens, making sure that she joined the FSB. So he was brutal to her. He used to send her out sailing in the Black Sea by herself in storms, and he set up a sort of watchguard over her to make sure that she did all the work she needed to do. So Katya broke out of that by going into the Moscow street scene as a teenager. So there you have a conflict. The other conflict that Katya has is that her mother was a ballet dancer, a prima ballerina with the Bolshoi Ballet. So Katya saw the glamorous life of her mother, but her mother, of course, drifted away because of the brutality of the father. So Katya's again more conflicted between having to join the intelligence agencies, which she begins to love, certainly in G8, but also rather fancying the life of her mother, glamour. So she has a massive conflict there. So Katya is a very, very conflicted person. She's determined, she's courageous, but she's also very, very headstrong and manipulative. So she's turned out to be a great character to write, if I can put it that way.
I was just thinking back to, because I know where the training is done at MI6, the facility at the fort, you got like your kind of male and female camps, as it were, in the different areas. And it got me to thinking, do you think in the future, I know the training differs slightly with males and females, do you think it's going to end up going down the route of like completely different training for new recruits going into the likes of MI6, where they because I know from working in the field that women have got a lot of advantages over men when it comes to a lot of things, gaining entry to places, or even something as simple as getting a lift. A stranded lady, it's a lot easier for them to get a lift than what it is a big burly bloke. So do you think it could end up going that way, where the training will be, two completely different kind of styles, as it were?
I don't know. I think, certainly when I was in the agencies, the only difference between the two was a slight difference in approach to problems.
Mm-hmm.
The teamwork was exceptionally close, and I really didn't see much difference, as it were, in the training of either. The training took place with both male and female.
Yeah.
So No, I don't think so. I think that there's an emphasis on the attributes that a male can bring and the attributes that the female can bring, but I think training must join them together because, of course, they operate together.
Yeah. And so with the kind of I'm gonna mix things up a little bit here now. When you've done your kind of legal work for the agencies, were there any cases that you stuck in your mind from that you thought, oh, I wonder if I can entangle that into the book without giving too much information away?
No,
No.
I wasn't going to base any character on any person I knew, or any of the actual operations on any operation that I'd done. But basically because as the book developed, or as my writing develops in the book, I don't want to be confined. I want to be able to spread out as the situation develops. So I write in rather a free flow way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Obviously the strategies out there right from beginning to end. One knows where it's going, but the tactics every day I actually discuss with Carrie, my wife, when we go around the park every morning, so we know what we're going to do the next day.
So, because Katya the Informer is actually the prequel, isn't it? Is that right?
Yes, Katya's a prequel. The first book was Katya, where Katya is chasing Gaddafi's money launderer, who's stolen $500 million when Gaddafi was killed. And she has to get through Gaddafi's minder, who is a international terrorist with his group of terrorists. She has to fight through him, and then she also has to go down into the real depths. Well, it's real depravity when you get down to the depths of money laundering. Very, very nasty people there, which she has to deal with. Both she has to go through the desert, she has to go out to Panama, she has to go out to a very iffy offshore tax haven in the Caribbean where the story winds up.
Wow. And do you think, well, like kind of when you were writing the first one, was it kind of the backstory, as it were, that just like kind of had you that intrigue that you thought, you know what, that the backstory itself would make a good novel, or was it something that you had planned before the first one was written?
No, because actually we had planned to move on, but as we wrote Katya, and Carrie and I write together, my wife and I write together, sort of pencil at dawn, but when we'd done that, we thought, gosh, Katya is developing so well, we really need to go back to her early days to see how she would have operated in her first operation and how she would make mistakes, because obviously in Katya, the book where she's chasing the money, she does make the odd mistake. But in Katya the Informer, in the very first operation she makes, of course she makes quite a lot of mistakes. And she has to fight her way through to get over that and to fight her way through. So in a way, the character develops even more, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, I did actually like that because of that level of realism, and I know I've told you this before, David, but it was absolutely brilliant with the bit where she was at the airport and she kind of answered a question and then was like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And I know because I'm speaking from experience, I've done exactly that kind of thing myself when I've kind of kicked myself afterwards and gone, oh, that was stupid, why did I say that? Yeah. So yeah, I did enjoy those levels of realism in the book for that character.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think in a sense, I don't know whether it's right or not, but we felt it was slightly unusual too, because actually writing a book about a spy who does make quite a lot of mistakes, I think is quite unusual. They're normally people who succeed all the time.
Yeah, Hollywood would have you believe that spies are absolutely brilliant at everything and win every time at everything they do, polished exterior, almost, almost superhuman.
Yeah. And I mean, you know them and I know them, but I mean, they're absolutely brilliant. But life is hard. Life is hard, particularly in the dark world of organised crime, terrorism, and now, of course, the creeping of Putin and China. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And of course, people are unpredictable.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Geez, I thought you guys would be just like James Bond. I thought you had all these nice suits and, all these people.
Yes, actually, we probably shouldn't be talking like this because the whole essence, of course, is to make everybody believe
Yeah.
invisible.
It's a reverse psychology trick for anybody who's listening, you see.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. The only thing that we can be happy about is that our opponents really do make a lot more mistakes than us, so that's quite useful.
So how do you get into the mindset, and is there a particular way that you can write a female character?
Yeah, well, as I say, I write with Carrie, so we discuss that quite a lot because when I was in the agencies, I was in a very privileged position because as a lawyer, you discuss all the operations before they take place for a number of different reasons. But you don't actually go out on the operations. And therefore one could see the minds of female agents or female officers working as one discussed how the operations went and also in the debriefs. But talking about the other side, the sort of more personal side, Carrie is absolutely invaluable, obviously, because she brings all that together. So we have quite an exciting meld of operational knowledge and the knowledge of how women work. Really good, really good.
And so when you're writing the evil character, the bad guys, so to speak, do you try to, take characters you've met in your life, or do you kind of run it after Gavin, or how do you write an evil character?
Out of experience, but not based on any particular person. As I say, if I base them on any particular person, I think I'd find myself in a cul-de-sac. I have to be able to explore and expand as that character develops, which I find exciting because having a straight line of a character, how the character is going to behave all the way through the book, tends not to allow you to suddenly think, oh my gosh, we could actually create this situation with this character or against this character that gives another dimension to the book or another piece of excitement to the story. So, yeah, Carrie and I discuss these walking around the park in the morning. When we get up, we're normally out in the park about 6 o'clock. Not many people there. And we get quite a few funny looks if we're discussing a really bad character. Carrie loves it. She's a great gun. I remember once when I was in Berlin, asked Carrie if she could take our younger son across the border in Berlin, from West Berlin to East Berlin, through all the border guards, the barbed wire, the wall, the searchlights, to take my youngest son to have an overnight stay in East Berlin. Well, she took him over and dropped him off, but she came back by herself. So the border guards had counted 2 people going out, but only one coming back into West Berlin or coming out of East Berlin. And they stopped her at the checkpoint and they surrounded the car with guns and all the rest of it. And eventually they let her go. Well, a worse problem occurred the next day when she went to collect PJ from East Berlin. And she went out single and came back with 2 people in the car. Now, that really did cause chaos because it was at night and they put her under the searchlights for an hour before they let her go. Anyway, she came up to the office. I was there with my French and American legal advisors waiting to see what had happened. She was absolutely furious because I hadn't told her that that's why we'd sent her over to see exactly what reaction the guards would have if she did this. So I haven't been able to live that down for some time.
Yeah, I love that story. I remember that when you told me about that, and I thought, yeah, that's a typical thing to do for us blokes, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's why she's able to talk about the baddies and knows exactly who they are. She's got experience of them in Berlin. Yeah, sure.
So what do you think that people in general, in the general public here, get wrong about agency workers? Like, obviously with all the movies and series that come out and over the years, and we see a certain, James Bond kind of thing, or, that kind of character or something like it. And of course that's made perfect, but what do you think in general we all get wrong about agency workers.
Yes, I think the problem is because, as Gavin and I were saying, there is a certain myth that the agencies are absolutely perfect. They know everything, so that if something bad happens, there is a quite natural tendency on part of the public to say, well, you didn't do your job properly, and therefore you were lazy, or you just didn't see something you should have seen. Whereas intelligence is like a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. There's very rarely a total 100% picture of it. So you're working a lot in the light, but quite a lot also in the shade. And sometimes it can be inevitable that something that should be there isn't. So you haven't got the full picture, and then things can go wrong. And quite rightly say, well, you should do your job better. I have absolutely no problem with the public blaming us for getting things wrong, but I think it's just useful to understand that there is, gathering intelligence is an incredibly difficult thing to do, even with all the electronic surveillance that one has now.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to some of the things I've done as well, because I mean, obviously, you've probably had an even bigger picture than me from the position you were in, and sometimes I'll be going out and getting like single source intelligence, bringing it back, thinking it's absolutely vital, and we need to act on this now, kind of urgency, and I'll put it on the desk, which will go to the analysts then, who will kind of like, yep, we'll take them, and of course I've got no idea what happens from there on out. It's kind of passed up the chain, as it were, and I don't know whether that piece of intelligence that to me probably seemed vital has made any difference at all, or whether it's made a hugely dramatic difference. So it's not like it is in the movies where it's a beginning, a middle, and an end with a nice little bow to say job done and mission accomplished. It doesn't quite work like that.
No, that's absolutely right, and I think also it's difficult for the public to understand that you can't rely on just one single source of intelligence. That source has to be double checked. So you have to look around to see if there's another means of getting towards that same piece of intelligence from another source, so that you can make absolutely sure that the piece of intelligence you've got is right. Otherwise, you're operating against an individual, whereas you shouldn't be operating at all, because you've got one piece of intelligence that actually is misinformation or has been misunderstood. So you have to be extremely careful how you operate against individuals. And it's very hidebound. The European Convention on Human Rights in the United Kingdom governs how the intelligence agencies work. So you have to look at the rights not only of the state, but you have to look at the rights of the terrorists, because terrorists have rights.
Well, and what about, especially lately with the Trumpian stuff, there's a lot of negativity toward CIA and agencies, like the terrorist attack in Russia. There's a lot of people on the right side in America that think the CIA was behind it. That was their first response. They did it, nobody else. So that's got to be tough as well to deal with.
Yes, absolutely. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about disinformation on the internet. There are people out there who will believe it. And I don't mean to say that these people have any evil intent. They are people going about their daily lives who can be misled by very, very well placed and very well coordinated misinformation on the internet, and it deceives them. And it's something that we are going to really have to cope with, which is not going to be easy in the future. You have elections coming up. We have elections coming up. We know perfectly well that there will be a barrage of disinformation, misinformation coming from Russia, China, in order to destabilize us.
Yeah, I've noticed recently the amount of things all over the place with the CIA, where they've said, the CIA did this, the CIA have done that, and did you know the CIA? And I'm thinking, and some of it's just absolutely ludicrous. You know, did you know the CIA were the ones who killed off all the dodo birds or whatever? And I'm thinking, you know, where do people get this stuff from? And not only where do they get it from, but why do they think, you know, the CIA would even want to do that, and what would be gained from it? You know, but it does it spreads like wildfire as soon as something's on the internet, before anybody's had a chance to kind of, you know, and the most people will share it and comment on it and take it as gospel before they've even had a chance to kind of confirm whether there's any shred of truth in it, and before you know it, it's in the fact books.
Yeah, but there are, I mean, of course it's in a vast minority, but there are quite a lot of fantasists out there. I mean, we had to deal with fantasists who come and say that we'd done all sorts of different things, and would have to actually spend time investigating those complaints. I mean, I remember one case where a widow came and to us and said, "Where's my husband's pension?" And we looked up the name, and we went through every single book that we could possibly look at in terms of what she told us. And it turned out he'd been a complete fantasist. And during his married life, he told he was a member of the agencies, and was when he disappeared for sort of 3 or 4 weeks at a time. He would say he was going out on an operation. He'd never been near it. The tragedy of it was that she was expecting his pension.
Was that you, Gavin? Was that?
Oh, what can I say? If only I'd been smart enough to think of that when I got married.
No. Well, you're a marked man, Gavin.
Yeah. Live and learn, right?
That's it, yeah.
How do you tackle writing the action and the murder or the violence, the sex and everything like that? Do you are you conscious of how you display that, or is it just kind of free for all?
No, I think it's got to be thought through before one writes it. At least have a picture in one's mind. I write in pictures. I find writing in pictures is much easier than not. So I have an idea, which Carrie and I will have discussed, and then somehow the words flow. And then, having flowed, Carrie will look at them and say, "Well, this is all rubbish. You need to go back and do that all over again." Between us, we get the words down on paper and hope that those words, having revised them 2 or 3 times, them through our editor, who of course is brutal. I mean, she's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Then at the end of that time, it's rather like a picture. You've got to look at it and say, "Well, that's as good as we can possibly get. Out it goes." Don't know if that makes sense. That's how I do it.
How do you consider your relationship with your characters and Katya and stuff like that? Do you hear your characters? Is it like a voice in your head? Is it like watching a movie, or do you have a different relationship?
Pictured relationship and developing. I find that one of the dangers is one can get too much into a character, and then that character starts running away with the plot. So I have to be very, very careful to make sure that those characters fit the bill and they don't run away with the plot. But yes, Carrie and I live with the characters. No, I don't think so. I think most authors do, actually. Because if you don't actually live with them, you don't understand them. You need to know what they like to drink, where they like to go, what their hobbies are, and have a really good backstory, but also allow them to develop, not have it confined on paper. I can't write down a character from beginning to end and then just write about that. I have to allow that character to develop alongside the other characters, and particularly with Katya, who is very manipulative. She's very deceptive, and she creates difficulties for characters as much as they create difficulties for her. So it's really, I think we both find it huge fun watching this develop and how things happen and how characters lead her to make mistakes and how she leads them into making mistakes and how she gets out of a problem or creates a problem for them. That we find great. In free flow, we find that works much better than trying to limit ourselves to a script.
How do you keep track? Because this is a series, so do you have sort of a Bible, as they call it, or some sort of a manual that you keep track of certain elements about characters so you don't mix them up later?
Yes, absolutely. We have a separate file, if you like, for each character. And every time we develop a bit more, that bit will go into that file so that one has that ability to remember exactly where that character's going. And if one sort of gets off piste a bit, you can go back to the file and say, no, hang on a minute, he wouldn't or she wouldn't do that. And then you bring it back to what the main traits of the character are.
You were saying that you write free flow, that you generally don't plot the entire novel out, but do you have like an idea where the story's going to go in your head before you even put pen to paper? And then even with the free flow, have you ever written yourself into a corner and gone, I'm not sure how I'm going to get out of this?
Well, the plot is yes, that's relatively well developed, but as you say, sometimes yes, one writes a bit, and you suddenly think, no, hang on a minute, that's just not going to work in relation to the whole plot. It doesn't happen very often. Well, I have been down a blind alley a couple of times, which you sort of have a little walk with Carrie, and we sort of managed to retrieve our steps and go back. But again, I don't know. I find that huge fun, because at least one's explored. And writing for us is just an expedition. It's an exploration, isn't it? I find that huge fun. It's a bit like developing an operation. It's all developing a negotiation. When I was in the Foreign Office, one has to sort of develop it as you go along and pick up the strands as they fall.
Do you know how many books you're going to do in a series like this, kind of when you're starting? Like, do you know how many of this series you're going to do?
Well, we did the first one, Katya, and then our publishers said, right, we're going to do 5. So we're now on the 3rd. Yeah, it's 3 of 5.
I'm going to change the subject a little bit. I'm going to ask, because your father founded an airline from the UK to South America, and I know as a youngster, we've talked about it before, you spent a lot of time in the jungles of Brazil and Chile. And do you think that there will be at some point a story similar to, or Britain talking about the jungle there and your time in the jungle?
Yeah. There will be. The one we're writing at the moment is actually based in the Laptev Sea in Siberia, and where the baddie has an interest, and Katya's gone out there to sort things out, and it involves a submarine, which we found rather interesting, and we're in contact with an absolutely brilliant submarine commander, ex-submarine commander, John T. Person, and he has been telling us all about how submarines work under the ice. So that's been quite exciting, and should be not too much of the submarine, of course, but that's where we're going. And sure, Brazil will be in the, I think it's, we've got an idea of Brazil in the 5th and last book, because Brazil is fantastic. As you know, I flew out to Brazil on a converted Lancaster when I was 6, literally just after the war, to see my parents had gone out there. As you say, father had founded an airline with a friend of his, RAF friend of his, back in London. And so my first taste of Brazil was on the coast of Natal, which is the easternmost point of Brazil, on the sea, in a place called, Natal, which was, funnily enough, an American air base during the war, that had a long enough landing strip to take the Lancaster bomber that had been converted for 8 passengers to go across the South Atlantic. Very exciting. Yeah. So excitement really started my life, and I've had an exciting career ever since, I'm lucky to say.
Yeah, hopefully the submarine guy I put you in touch with as well might be a bit useful to you, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, right. No, he's a great character. Very, very good. He was actually the navigating officer who was responsible in the submarine Conqueror for sinking the Belgrano in the Falklands War. So he knows exactly what he's talking about.
Well, now listen, David, are you on social media? Do you have a website? How do you like readers to find you?
Yeah, sure. If they want to reach me, My publisher is Coinkydink. That's COINDYNK. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, X as well.
We'll put all of that up on our website so that people have it and they can find you easily.
Thank you very much indeed, Alan. That's kind.
And the book, Katya the Informer, Trust No One, Gamble Everything. Our guest is the author, David Bickford. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much indeed for having me, Alan and Gavin. It's been a real pleasure, and my best regards to both America and Canada, both of which I love, and we've been with both countries for years and years and years, and just increase our love for both the country and the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.